Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islam in Life with me, Raza Ghazim. Over the centuries, it is undoubtedly the case that the culture of Muslim societies, Muslim communities and Muslim countries has changed. So the issue of a changing culture per se cannot be a problem from an Islamic perspective, or is it? However, the issue of imposing a culture on Muslim societies has been seen as problematic. In different decades and in different countries, the terms used to articulate this phenomenon have changed from the concept of Westoxication to recent amplification of concepts and language, such as cultural violence.
Ayatollah Khamenei, in an open letter to youths in the West, complained about the West conducting cultural violence by imposing upon the global world its aggressive and moral promiscuous values. Cultures do evolve with time, and Muslim cultures too over the ages and across the geographical spectrum have changed and differed. However, given the powerful tools in the form of media and commercialization, the West is seen to be pushing down the throat of the Muslims a toxic cultural alteration, trivializing the very definition of morality.
That certain foreign powers, which, for example, have invaded Iraq, have a continued interest in the region and do have a continued interest in not having strong political, military, or economic powers in the region. And it's quite possible that certain powers might have actually employed certain, quote, resistance groups, if you will, to fulfill their agendas. This is definitely not unknown. It happens all the time. It's happened all the time throughout history, and we do see something similar in Afghanistan.
What is important and what is necessary is we need to be proud of being Muslim, but we need to understand, which is why I'm studying, understand what Islam actually is.
We're honored to be joined by our esteemed guest, Professor Tariq Ramadan, to discuss all of these issues. Welcome to the program, Professor.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. I wanted to start off by asking, Muslim cultural changes that have taken place, if there is a change in Muslim culture as it evolves and so on, is that a problem from an Islamic perspective?
No, I think first what is really important is that even when we define Islamic culture, this is something which is even we have to understand what we mean by this. Because Islam is a set of principles and we also have an ongoing process of thinking about new legal framework when the situation is changing. So by definition, the Islamic legal framework is moving from al-ahkam, the rulings that we have, to ijtihad, which means this intellectual production of new rulings in a new situation. Meaning that depending on time and space, we have to move. And then we encounter cultures. So anything which is good in these cultures is accepted per se as it is. And even the concept in the Quran that is what is acceptable in a society is al-ma'ruf, which is known by the people as being good. And when this is ma'ruf, known as being good and does not contradict an Islamic principle, we take it. So the movement within a culture, the dynamic, the historical dynamic is something which is natural. And this is why, all this discussion that we have, a tradition is the status quo versus modernity, which is progress, is completely simplistic. There is no tradition or culture without changes and moving throughout history. So the question is, in which way and how are we changing? So we have to question the values and the moral values and the legal framework which is behind this move. But the movement per se, as you are asking, is something which is natural. Not only the movement of one culture, but the diversity of the cultures is what makes Islam a universal religion. One religion, many cultures, within which we are able to live as Muslims.
One of the things in your writing that you've talked about in the past is this idea that there is no religion without culture. Do you want to just expand a little bit on that before I go on to the next?
Yes, that's very important. When the revelation came, it came within a specific culture, which was the culture of the Arabs in the peninsula, in Mecca, and then in the whole region. So a religion was translated and the principles within the culture. So you don't have a religion without a specific culture within which you are first experiencing it. And there are no culture, because what is a culture? A culture is a system of value with custom and a way of life. So there is no culture without something which is religiously inspired or spiritually inspired. So there is no religion without a culture, and no culture without religion. But a religion is not a culture, so it's not the same. So here you have a set of principles, here you have a set of values, and it's a way of life. And what we need to get here is to understand in which way our principles are in tune, or don't contradict, or the principles are not in contradiction with the cultural way of life. So, for example, today with Western Muslims living in the West, the European cultures are for us among the Islamic cultures in what we take as good from these cultures, and we resist and try to reform what we understand as being bad. So we are European by cultures, we are Westerners by cultures, but it doesn't mean that we are not we are accepting everything. We don't select within the culture. Even, by the way, in the cultures of origin, we have to be selective in what we accept and what we reject.
You raise an interesting point. I'll come back to that later on about this and what we're taking from Western culture. But I want to move on to this idea of this, when you have cultural exchange, there is going to be give and take when you come across another culture. So where does this notion of cultural violence come in? What's the issue? What's going on there with this notion?
That's a very important point, because what we have, for example, in history, and what, for example, Ibn Khaldun and other, when they were dealing with history, was saying, when you have two cultures and even two civilizations, so a civilization is numerous cultures together having the same principle and some of the same features and the common features. So you can have a Western civilization within many cultures, so the French, the British, the Swedish, and these are cultures within and we have exactly the same with Islam. When they come together on an equal footing, and then they take and give, and then there is always an exchange. We take and everything that is good in the other culture or the other civilization we take and we give. That's something which is the
not
natural.
necessarily all good all of the time that's taken.
That's the point. No, but at least what we are expecting is to take the good. In history, it's why the opposite. Very often we see that and this is why it's important, is when there is a power relationship and domination. When one culture or one civilization is imposing onto another civilization because there is a power relationship, it's vocabulary, it's definitions of things, and the system of value and the way of life. This is where it's no longer a dialogue. It's not no longer I take and I give. It's I have to take. I have no choice but to follow or to accept the imposition. So you have political colonialism and you have cultural colonialism, which is cultural imperialism. So it's much more symbolic. So when we speak about cultural violence, we are speaking about a symbolic violence where you are violated in what you believe, in what are your principles, through an imposition process or a domination process where you have no choice. And this is what is happening today with the domination of what we call the world culture. When we speak about the world culture, in fact, we speak about westernization of the world. So this is where we are talking about this. It's no longer a dialogue. And when the people are saying, oh yes, but you have the choice. But when the powerful are so powerful and you are so dominated at so many levels, it's no longer a question of freedom.
Can you expand a little bit more on this idea that you talk about, that they're dominating? How is that domination manifesting itself? You know, what's going on with that?
In fact, this is why we can't only speak about the cultural domination, because it's multidimensional. When you have technological domination, when you have economic domination, when you have political domination, and even military domination, when all these dominations are there, that we see that when it comes to technology and progress and sciences, you are trying to catch up. So they have the means. And then they have the economic power to decide for you, because it's not enough to have a democracy with people who are elected at the national level if you don't have economic stability and economic independence. So this is where you see when you do not have the technology and you don't have the money. This is where the culture is coming. So with very powerful means. And we think in the global south that these are only means. We think internet is but a means, that the TV sets that we have in our living rooms are only means. No, they are not means. They have values. So when the object, when the scientific products, when the technological products are coming with a specific meaning in the way they are going to be used, in what they are, the symbol that they are bringing within your home, this is very much violent in the way they are dealing with your own system of values. So we have to be quite clear on this. It's what is coming with all this is not only means without a mindset or an ideology. Is means in the name of an ideology, bringing with it the terminology, the way of life, a very specific viewpoint, worldview that we have. And we need to understand that, because at the end, I myself, for years, I was saying, we take the means and we put our meanings. But that's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as that, because if you want to take the TV set, or even internet, and you think that you are going to moralize internet, try to do that. That it's so powerful, it's so huge, the power that it has on your minds, on your feeling, on your the natural things that are attractive, that you have to be very selective upstream, not downstream, when it comes to you.
It's interesting. I'm going to be coming back to a few of the points that you make. We like to keep this show as interactive as possible and really value your opinion. Here is what you sent us this week.
This week we asked, is it possible to have cultural exchange with Western culture that is based on mutual respect? Sidika from UK said, yes, this is possible, but for that to happen, the two sides need to acknowledge first the necessity of respecting different points of view. The West usually thinks its values are superior, and that's a problem. And Thamana from Kenya said, not only is it possible, but this is happening. Muslims have been adopting from the Western cultures what is good, and that is only right. As long as we don't adopt everything blindly, we can enrich our own cultures by adopting the positives. That's all the comments we have for this week. If you'd like to have your comments featured on the show, be sure to follow us on Facebook or join us on Twitter.
One of the things, Tariq, that you were talking about, and you've talked, and I want to bring up, is this idea that from within Western culture, people have argued that aggression is something that is really being exported, and in various ways, in terms of whether you talk about media, whether it's games and so on and so forth. Why is that being exported? That aspect of Western culture in particular, and then why are those societies that are taking that, why are they being so gullible to actually accept it?
For two reasons, and I would say we have to be very, very cautious with the words that we are using. When you speak about aggression, it's as if, it's attacking you. And it's true when it comes to your rationality and when it comes to your value system. For example, it's an aggression on religions and on spirituality. But it's not an aggression on your nature. And this is why it's very powerful. The very power of the dominant culture now is not to attack your nature, is to play with it. Why? Because we know this. In all our spirituality is that we are attracted by money, power, instincts, passions, desires. So this is playing with this. It's telling you your nature is our market. So we are going to play with this. So we are going to entertain and to make money out of this. So it's exploiting and nurturing your nature in order to make what? To transform you not into a being who thinks, but into a being who buy. So it's a market. So we play with this and you are going to be a consumer. So this is the very essence of a consumerist colonization. So it's a consumerist culture. The world culture is mainly about this. So we give you a mobile phone. It's a good one, but there is another one coming. So with this, you are going to create something which is addiction. But addiction on your nature. So it's not an aggression. It's very seductive. It's enticing you to come and to buy. So from a being who thinks, you end up being somebody who buys and who is in the consumerist process. So this is very powerful. But when you come to think about it, it's very powerful and it's aggressive because it's against your value system. On the other side, what you need to understand here is that all this, it's based on what? And why is it very powerful? Because it is attractive. And this is, we need to understand it's very deep psychologically speaking. Because in every country in the South you go, the people are rejecting the Western domination with their mind, and they are attracted at the same time. So there is a schizophrenia in the fact that at one point you like it, and you don't like that you like it. So it's creating a tension within your own soul, body, understanding, and then you are struggling with this because this is the very essence of domination, knowing that in the West they are making money out of it. So it's all about money. It's a very powerful economic system based on how we're going to transform you and transform your being into a market within which or through which we are going to make money.
The example that you gave, for example, of the mobile phone, some people listening will say, well, the mobile phone is quite a useful thing. There are a number of things that you can actually do and use it as a force for good. And so so the fact that something gets better and it gets more refined, gets more, in terms of the functionality of it, etc. Why is that a problem? I mean, because that equation of what you're talking about, consumerist kind of colonialism and so on and so forth, but at the same time, well, this is something that we try to improve all the time in terms of technology.
No, to improve it's good, but if when we are improving, it's nurtured in you the sense that you always need better. You know that with the last mobile phone, that was okay. You can do what you had to do. But when it's always creating into you the need for the next one, so the next one is going, so this need, this addiction to progress, it's the perversion of what progress is all about. In fact, what I understood when we were talking about progress is to make me more independent, not to make me more addict. So this addiction is exactly the opposite of what in our spiritual life. It's the opposite of La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, the Tawheedi process, the paradigm of Tawheed is there is no God but God, so no other addiction, no other worship. At the end, the consumerist society is transforming everything, playing with something which is natural, attacking the spiritual, and making you not independent with God, but addict with human beings within the process, and so this is why in the traditional cultures there is something which is, yes, we have needs, but what we find, we are satisfied with what we have. And when you are satisfied with what you have, it's the starting process of liberation, of being at peace. You don't need more. But when we are never satisfied, we are always going through this addiction process, at the end you won't be happy, and you end up thinking that happiness is in what you have, while what we are saying, no, the index of happiness is to be happy with who you are, not with what you have.
Now, within this notion, because this is something that you could potentially argue is something that's always been something that you have to battle with.
Yeah, true.
For the last 1400 years, or perhaps even prior to that. But how does this relate to this notion of cultural violence that we are talking about specifically, the Western imposed culture that's going on? Is that something that's always happened and it just happens to be the West right now, or what is it?
You are right. It was always there. The problem that we have now is that the power of the means are changing the nature of the domination. The means are so powerful that now it's intellectual colonization even. It's the way you think, it's the way you look at the world, it's even the standards of beauty. You have statistics now and surveys showing that the Western model of beauty are becoming internationalized. So what we had in very far countries is now the same as in the West. So beauty in the West is beauty there. So movies and all. So this is why. It was always, the potentiality of having this was there, and it happened before. But the power of the means now are changing everything. So how are we going to resist? That's a very important discussion that we need to have, because some are saying in the West, Serge Latouche, who is an economist, was saying, you know, the only thing that is going to save us is the West imploding. It's not going to work, so we need something else. So wait for this to collapse. I wouldn't say that this is possible, that is not our take, but we have to ask a very deep question. It's natural for the countries that are dominated to take from the dominant, but this is where there is a resisting process in everything which has to do with education, with our priorities, that should be there. In educating the people to use the means and not to think that the means are void of meanings. This is something which is, and this is why the spiritual teaching is essential.
And one of the things that's been talked about, and you talked about the idea of resistance in particular, you know, you mentioned passions and desires and so on, and the wholesale marketing of that within Muslim world and throughout the world. And you talk about that it needs to be resisted and so on. I want you to tell me a little bit more, when you talk about that resistance, how is that going to happen? I mean, part of it is that why are people in those worlds who reject that, okay, this is wrong, but you said you dislike the fact that you like it. I mean, how's that going to work? Because this is about whole communities, whole countries. I mean, are we talking about censorship? Is that the direction that needs to be gone in? How is it going to be tackled?
No, it's not going to work even. Censorship is not going. How are you going to do this? You know, you have your internet, your computers, your TV sets in your living room. So how are you going to do this? Are you going to isolate yourself? No, it's very much a situation when you need to come back to education, and also to get it right. We are living in the West, and we know how much the people are not happy. There is no happiness here. It's in Bhutan that they have an index of happiness, saying that the way we are going to know if we are developed is happiness, is not how much money we have. So there is a spiritual and psychological crisis in the West. We should not be happy with it, but we have to understand that if we don't take this seriously, if we don't go also for a better understanding of that, at the end, what is very important is your relationship with the self. It's your own education. It's to be selective in the means that you are using. It's to struggle against your own addictions and to get them and to know them. So know yourself, know your addictions, and try to get a better understanding of your real needs. Don't let the people and don't let fashion tell you what are your needs and to manipulate your mind through your desires and your instincts. So this is a very deep education that we need, and we also have to get it right. Unfortunately, what we take from the West is very often what is bad, and we don't take from the West what is good, because there are many things that we can use in the West. We don't do that. We take the worst and we forget the best.
And just to drill on that notion of cultural violence and respecting the other culture, is it possible to have an exchange with Western culture and other cultures which is done on the basis of mutual respect? Or is that simply not possible because of that power relationship that exists?
At the time we are speaking now, it's not possible. It's really not possible, because the whole system in the West is about dominating. It's about dominating. If the transnational corporation wants to sell products, they have to attack cultural way of life. It happened with big transnational about drinking, for example, going against the tea in China, for example, or our own way of. So it's very difficult, and I would say it's going to be resistance. It's going to be resistance, and it's going to be also relying the dissatisfaction of the people in the West. That is also something that we have to take into account.
Lots of interesting points being made. The Muslim cultures of the world have developed to reflect their particular interpretation of the Islamic faith that would fit into the particular history of their own community. While cultural exchange can produce interesting dialogue and respectful introspection, the issue of the cultural violence of the West in imposing its own moral values on all through the tools that it has available to impose cultural change has become an existential threat. The first step to countering it is, of course, to articulate it and to recognize it. And perhaps this discussion has done that. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. I would like to thank Professor Tariq Ramadan for his views on the topic and for joining us. And I would thank all of you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.